Good morning. I am Chaplain Audrey Knegge, along with Chaplain Robert. Thank you to Joe, our faithful AV volunteer, for helping us on Friday mornings. As a pastoral services team, we count on our many volunteers to be able to offer spiritual programs and the care that we do. You probably also have people that you count on, institutions that you count on, to live a stable, fulfilling life. What happens then when those things, those people, feel under threat? When our way of life as we know it feels like it's crumbling? Perhaps you have felt like that at some time, or perhaps you are feeling that way now. For Ethan, the author of today's psalm, and the people to whom he is writing, life as they knew it was dissolving on many levels. The Davidic kinship established by God was wavering, and the people were on the brink of exile. The longevity of David's kingly line was in question, and so this was much more than just a political calamity. It was a covenantal crisis.
Yeah. So, diving into our lesson today, we're on our last session in this unit, and it's titled Celebrating God's Covenant with Us. Our purpose this morning is to understand the faithfulness of God in the face of disappointed hopes, and the failures of national leaders. So we will read sections of Psalm 89 this morning. So like verses 1 to 4, 15 to 28, 38 to 41, and 49. So let's begin with verse 1. I will sing of the Lord's loyal love forever. I will proclaim your faithfulness with my own mouth from one generation to the next. That's why I say your loyal love is rightly built forever. You established your faithfulness in heaven. You said, I made a covenant with my chosen one. I promised my servant David, I will establish your offspring forever. I will build up your throne from one generation to the next. Selah.
Verse 15. The people know the celebratory shout, are happy. They walk in the light of your presence, Lord. They rejoice in your name all day long and are uplifted by your righteousness, because you are the splendor of their strength. By your favor, you make us strong, because our shield is the Lord's own. Our King belongs to the Holy One of Israel. Once you spoke in a vision to your faithful servants. I placed a crown on a strong man. I raised up someone specially chosen from the people. I discovered my servant David. I anointed him with my holy oil. My hand will sustain him. Yes, my arm will strengthen him. No enemy will oppose him. No wicked person will make him suffer. I will crush all his foes in front of him. I will strike down all those who hate him. My faithfulness and my loyal love will be with him. He will be strengthened by my name.
I will set his hand on the sea. I will set his strong hand on the rivers. He will cry out to me, you are my Father, my God, the rock of my salvation. Yes, I'll make him the one born first. I will make him the high king of all earth's kings. I will always guard my loyal love towards him. My covenant with him will last forever. But you, God, have rejected and despised him. You've become infuriated with your anointed one. You've canceled the covenant with your servant. You've thrown his crown in the dirt. You've broken through all his walls. You've made his strongholds a pile of ruins. All those who pass by plunder him. He's nothing but a joke to his neighbors. Where now are your loving acts from long ago, my Lord? The same ones you promised David by your own faithfulness.
The full psalm is a long one, and the psalmist invites us on a journey that begins with thanksgiving, and it moves to lament and beyond. At the beginning of this study on the book of Psalms, we mentioned that the entire collection of Psalms is arranged in 5 books, each ending with a doxology, and at the end of the book is what's called a seam psalm. Well, Psalm 89 is a seam song coming at the end of book 3. And it ends with this doxology: "Blessed be the Lord forever. Amen and amen." Hill and Walton, in their survey of the Old Testament, describe this psalm's purpose as a seam psalm to show a covenant in disarray, a people who are confused and under siege. Within this psalm, then, is a celebration of God's covenant as well as lament in what seems to be the unraveling of that covenant relationship.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at verses 1 through 4. This psalm begins here with a song of thanksgiving for God's loyal love, that hesed. It declares that God's steadfast love is enduring, with faithfulness established as firmly as the heavens. The King James uses the language, "I will sing of the mercies of the Lord." And this brings to mind the chorus out of this verse.
Yes. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing. I will sing. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness, thy faithfulness. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness to all generations. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord.
So there is this commitment to pass down the knowledge of God's character to future generations. Verses 3 and 4 focuses on God's covenant with David, promising to establish a future line and a throne forever.
Now, I have to confess that this whole idea of kingship as a theme in the Psalms is kind of hard for me to connect with. A lot harder than, say, praise or lament. This connection to God through a king is foreign to us. That's not the way that we connect to God. But for this people who understood their covenant relationship with God as established through the line of David, and their stability and identity as a people was in part invested in that leadership, then we can begin to understand a little bit why this was such an important relationship, why it was worthy of celebration and notice. So in verses 15 to 18, they are praising God, and a part of that celebration is their experience of God's light in his uplifting presence and power. And this flows into their praise for the king, who is their shield, and as our lesson author states, the embodiment of the strength of God on earth. So we can begin to see then how this would feel like a crisis when the king is unfaithful.
Yeah. Well, in verses 19 to 28, then, we read of a vision that God once had for a new king, for David, and recounts the story of the prophet Nathan, who anointed David, specially chosen from Israel to be the future king. And the story is in Samuel 2:16, where it's promised that David will be the house and the kingdom. Promised that David, his house and kingdom, shall be made sure forever before me, that your throne shall be established forever. So these verses tell us that God vows to establish his hand with David and strengthen his arm, giving him authority extended from sea to rivers, and that God ensures that his mercy and faithfulness will remain, and David maintaining the covenant forever.
In verse 38, then, it brings the reader to this devastating present reality. There's that picture of hope, but here's the reality. The anointed one, the one in the line of David, has been rejected. So the specific king in question was likely Jehoiachin, whose brief reign is cut short by the Babylonian invasion. And the king's defeat and humiliation create this sharp contrast with the imagery of God's own shield, anointed by God. This is not only a defeat in the moment, but it is a degradation of David's legacy. It is a moment of looking around and saying, this is not the way it was meant to be. And where is God in all of this? Verse 49 cries out in pain and frustration, "Where now are your loving acts from long ago, my Lord?" It is a moment of full identity crisis.
Yeah. Well, our text in this quarter, thinking back to Lamentations, brings us full circle. The book of Lamentations gave us a bleak look into a world of the ruined Jerusalem and its people as they cried out in pain and disillusionment. And here in Psalm 89, we're brought back into a troubled world, a crisis in the community and a crisis of faith. Our author believes that it's helpful for us as we read these scriptures, not as a singular voice, but as a collection of voices that we can go to, that's helpful for us as we question or cry out to God in our times of distress.
Yeah. So Psalm 89 ends with a desperate cry. So what do we do with this tumultuous ending to Psalm 89? Well, we keep reading. Psalm 90, the lesson author points out, the voice of Psalm 90 is a calming proclamation that it is the living God that is their dwelling place from everlasting to everlasting, and not the rubble of Jerusalem in front of them. It is the Lord who is King of kings, and that will be their refuge even when they're earthly kings, when the monarchy fails. Psalm 89 is the voice of a people experiencing brokenness. And we can identify with brokenness. John Swinton says this about lament in the Psalms in his book, Raging with Compassion. He says, the lament psalm is an important liturgical source and means of reframing suffering in the light of God's hope and promise. The editor of the Book of Psalms places this enduring promises of Psalm 90 in response to Psalm 89, the desperate question, where now are you? that, Lord, you have been our help from generation to generation, is the answer. Henry Nouwen writes this about reshaping the burdens that we bear under the light of God's blessings. He says it's the great task of allowing the blessing to touch our brokenness. Then our brokenness will gradually come to seem as an opening toward the full acceptance of ourselves, brokenness and all, as beloved.
So kind of a hope. Yeah. So our author wants to give us a glimpse of hope and takes us to Isaiah. And we, especially these verses between chapter 40 and 66, that offer a look into the post-exile of Israel.
After the crisis that we just talked about is
Right.
over, they're coming back, yeah.
So we read about a new thing that is about to happen. Isaiah 43:19 tells us that I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? This servant song in these chapters gives us a picture of a new way of life, a new way of embodying God's power and presence in our world. And so it makes me think of today. What new thing or movement or activity do we see around us? And how do we see God at work in that?
In closing this unit on Psalms of New Life, our lesson author returns us to two of the studies that were kind of right in the middle of this from John's Gospel, Jesus' entry into Jerusalem and Jesus' resurrection. Between the celebration of Jesus' entry and the jubilation of his resurrection is a deep valley of suffering. And Jesus himself uses the language of lament from the Psalms to express the loneliness he experiences in that suffering. So how might we think of our own sufferings, the anxieties of the world right now, in light of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection? Can Jesus provide an example of a path for responding to those in power today?
Yeah. Well, our author closes this section with some positive verses from the book of Lamentations. In Lamentations 3:22-23, it is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. Now, this is a verse that I use from time to time as I minister in healthcare. It's an uplifting verse that gives us hope for the day that is upon us, especially when things might seem bleak or dark. So the next time you wake up, may you be encouraged also by these verses. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. Let's close with these words. God draws us near to us when we are brokenhearted. To comfort us, Lord, give us strength, and to remind us of your never-ending love that never lets go of us. Amen.